God has a good and beautiful purpose for human sexuality. Even when it doesn't feel that way, it's true. It was created with intention, with meaning, revealing something about God and about us. And as we learn to trust Him with our sexuality, it draws us closer to Jesus. This is the Christ Centered Sexuality Podcast. We're glad you're here.
All right, welcome back, everyone, to the table. Welcome back to the conversation. And if you've been listening, you know that last week we were having a conversation and asking the question, what is human sexuality, or what do we mean when we say that term? This week, we're talking about why the heck does God care so much about human sexuality? Why does God care how I navigate my sexuality? Why does God care about sex being in marriage? So it just seems that scripturally, at least, God really does care about human sexuality. And so we're going to dive into that today. Yeah. What do you think about that, Katie? Is that a good thing?
I think it's really good. I think that sometimes there's a question that people have of actually, does he even care? And if God cares, do I really need to care about it too? It's easy sometimes to feel like, okay, there's a lot of rules about certain things, but tell me the nitty gritty of why this is important.
Sure.
And I want to understand that in order to live my life a certain way.
Yeah. For sure.
I think it's good.
Yeah. And I think one of the ways, at least I've observed, that I know God cares about this is how frequent did I get it?
Yes.
How frequent the topic of human sexuality shows up in scripture in kind of a variety of different forms, even you mentioned rules and prohibitions and stuff like that. But yeah, God, it is a pretty big theme because you're dealing with human beings who have sex drives and things get a little crazy from time to time. So yeah, and it is a topic that definitely comes up a lot in scripture.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about the Bible, what stories come to mind for you of where you can see God caring about human sexuality?
Oh, you're testing all of my biblical knowledge right now. The stories that come up. I mean, there's lots of stories and even things I think in the book of Leviticus that talk about like, okay, there's actual standards that God has for how you're to go about that and how you're not to go about that. In the law, the Old Testament law, there was very strict guidelines around sexual behavior. And I think it wasn't until I started studying more of the historical context that I actually started to realize, okay, these are not just rules for the sake of taking away all the fun. It actually, there was value that the Lord was placing on women, especially in some of these things, in a culture that didn't value women. There were cleanliness rules that helped with the spread of diseases. And so when you actually start to look at some of these things and even the practicalities of some of God's guidelines around some of this, you see that there's so much wisdom and care actually for his people when the Lord puts some boundaries on these things. Not to mention all the covenantal stuff with that. So I don't know about like specific stories. I don't know if you have any in mind that you're thinking of.
No, but I actually want to talk. I think you said something really important there. Like, we know God cares about this because he put boundaries around it, and he put like restrictions, prohibitions. And I think at least for me, when I read the scriptures, and this is not just even with human sexuality, when I read the scriptures, we read the law specifically, and you see the boundaries, because he places boundaries on things like worship.
Yeah.
He places boundaries on things like loving your neighbor, he places boundaries on just so like basically so many different things, but it actually is, I think those boundaries reveal something about what he's doing, and it's pointing to like the overall bigger picture of how he wants us to live and what our lives can look like when we're honoring him. So I would agree. I think I would go to the same place. Like, okay, he does talk a lot about sex in Leviticus. Yeah. Like, it's awkward at times. Like, dude, I don't know. Who did we do our out loud read with in the Bible school? We have to do this out loud. We have to read the books of the Bible out loud. With other people in a group who I don't even remember, but I think it was a mixed group. Was it me, you?
Nathan might have been there.
Nathan was probably there.
Yeah.
Megan maybe.
Yeah.
But anyway, reading the book of Leviticus out loud in a mixed group of people was
a lot of bodily fluid. I feel like.
So, but it's like you're like, oh, okay. And I guess this is what we're doing now. But so I agree. Like reading the prohibitions, I think the initial as a human nature, you're like, oh, why so many no's? Like I don't like that. Yeah. I think the other story that comes to mind is Joseph. When he flees Potiphar's wife, because it's like sexual immorality is one of the only things that I think we're told to flee from, and he does a good job of that. Like didn't she like grab his robe or something like that, and he's like later, so
left without it,
left without it. So I think that to me is, and to see how Joseph handled that and honored that. Oh man, David and Bathsheba, I think that's a pretty famous one, and just see that David got super capped in all the wrong ways. Like it's not a good example of how Joseph is a good example of fleeing sexual immorality. David is not. And so we have some of these big characters, and they seem to have, like, some of these big characters in the Bible have connections with sexual immorality or what and how they navigated it.
Well, and that that story of David too, I mean, you see what God spoke to Nathan the prophet to then go talk to David about, and I think it's highlighted because God cares, because God cared about what happened to Bathsheba's husband, and you know, the story after that and how it affected David's family, and you know, all of those things. So it's like God's really intentional in the stories that he puts in scripture, and with the things that maybe aren't done the right way, he's intentional with highlighting certain things for us to know about that, how it affects. I think if God didn't care, it would have been something that wouldn't have been mentioned, you know? Yeah. It's like big whoop. Yeah. Yeah. He was a king. He had this ability. He did what, you know, and nobody ever mentioned anything. But God chose to make a big deal out of it.
Yeah. And I like that phrasing, God chose to make a big deal out of it. And it was over his choice to murder someone, but he murdered because of his sexual immorality. And then even going back to the Joseph story of like the fact that that's even highlighted as well, and how Joseph handled that encounter with Potiphar's wife, I think is really good. So scripturally, like, there's just a lot of stories that at least I've observed. Another thing that I think of scripturally when it comes to why does God care about this is when it comes to the covenant of marriage. Because for me, growing up, I got a lot of, it's almost like you have like this Leviticus, like all the no's, you know, like Leviticus is a lot of no, like we shouldn't do this, we shouldn't do that, which is fair. Like we need that. But I think that was a lot of my experience growing up in the church. Was I got a lot of no's and what not to do. Yeah. And we don't do this, when it comes to my sexuality and human sexuality. But I think one thing that was missing for me was seeing God's overall big picture vision of why he cares about it. So it's like, okay, I get that he says no, but what does he say yes to? And I think that question I've been answering over the last few years and seeing scripturally, like, okay, the Bible actually begins and ends with a marriage. Like Genesis 1 and 2, God creates man and woman. It's Adam and Eve. And then at the end, was it Revelation 19 or 20 or something like that? It's like the marriage supper of the Lamb. And so, and then another thing, learning like it's a cheesy line, and I think I've said it in other episodes, but it's like the Bible is just this pursuit of love for humanity. And so I think that's one thing that's beginning is like I'm gaining a vision of like, oh man, like basically you could read through the entire scriptures and just see God cares so deeply about people.
Yeah.
He's given us the gift of human sexuality to express certain things, and all of it is meant to kind of point us to him or to this ultimate marriage, this ultimate union. And just seeing that's at the end of the day what all the knows hopefully will put us on a path towards.
Right. And I also think too, I mean, when you're talking about what you said, people talked about the no's a lot. You needed to see the big picture vision. I think it goes back to our need to know why. You know, I think about my kids, and sometimes you're like, don't do that. But why? When they first start being able to reason and talk and have their own opinion about things, that why question is over and over and over again. And you feel like you're constantly explaining why this and why that. And I think it's in our nature to ask that question. We want to know the why behind these things. And I actually think that that's something that maybe we haven't always done a good job of, giving the why behind God said these things. And that vision piece is so huge, because I think on that big picture scale, you have the love letter, you know, the scripture is this incredible love story.
Yeah. Which it is, even though it's cheesy.
But there's also, on a more intentional and smaller scale, there's why behind. It's like what we even talked about with health and with good relationship. And it's like you look at the things that I think sex has the ability to create if done the right way and to bring into place. And on the flip side of that, the things that sex has the ability to destroy and to bring about that causes so much damage if done out of God's original design and intention. And I think all of us can probably point to areas that we can at least see, but also probably experienced in our own lives of that brokenness that happens when it's not done the right way. Yeah. There's so much damage to it.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that I think I've always known that I think sex is special. I think that's probably a phrase I could be comfortable with understanding my entire life. But I think recently I've changed my language or started using like sex, more terms like sex is actually powerful.
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm kind of coming or drawing some of these conclusions is because when you see how, I mean, it has the power to produce life, and then it also has the power to damage a person for the rest of their life, in a sense. You know, when you talk about like things like sexual abuse and just those really terrible things that humanity does to one another, I think sex is just very powerful. Yeah. But when it's done and it's used in God's design, it's one of the most special things that humanity can participate in. Yeah. Because it's so powerful, and because God has a vision and a plan for it. And I think just learning and growing in that understanding of what is that design, and we'll talk about that in a future episode, but understanding that, man, God really cares. If I can just start there, kind of like God cares about this, and if God cares about this, then what I do with it matters. Yeah. How I steward it matters, and just some of those kinds of things. I think I just wish I would have had that growing up. Like, hey, this is something that's powerful, and you need to learn how to steward it. I think that I wish, rather than just
Well,
know,
but also,
like
I mean,
this-
you think about being a teenager, and it's like if somebody were to say like sex is powerful, they'll be like, oh yeah, I know. You know, like I
Sure.
think there's this aspect of things too where we like to make a joke out of everything,
Yeah.
and it's like we also we don't actually want it to be this serious, powerful thing because it's awkward.
yeah,
And we want to just be able to joke about it, make it casual because the seriousness of it makes us feel weird, you know?
uncomfy.
Uncomfy.
It's an uncomfy.
And sex is all around us all the time. So it's like, it's a way that we deflect, I think, sometimes by like making it casual and not having to really think about the seriousness of it because that's not fun always to think about the serious.
No, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that is a place like I think statistically, like I'm in like the, like, hey, you see the serious side of the brokenness of it a lot. And so, and someone who has joking as maybe a coping mechanism at times,
No,
I can like make terrible jokes at times or whatever just to cope. But I think, I do wish I had that. Like, how do we communicate to, okay, you have young kids, whatever. How do you start communicating? And I'm even trying to think of teenage SJ, who is a train wreck, but like, okay, God has a vision. Like I thought the love letter thing was the most cheesy thing, but I think it would have been beneficial for me still, even though cheesy, like to hear that, like, okay, sex is powerful. Like this is how can we help our kids, our young people, and people that never maybe heard this messaging? Like, this is something that's important and special, and we're going to talk about it, even if it is uncomfy and awkward.
Yeah. And I mean,
Like,
to a certain degree, I think there's always going to be that little, immature person thing that we have where it's like we giggle at things that make us feel uncomfortable, and I'm sure that
you'll appreciate this because you laugh at inappropriate times.
Never.
Like when things are intense, you laugh. Apparently that's a sign of high intelligence.
Oh, yes. I'm very, very smart. I must be very intelligent.
You must be very intelligent to laugh at really serious moments. Like
I don't know. I'd like to see the studies on that.
I know. This might have been an Instagram post, so maybe I should
to make us all feel better.
To make us all feel better.
We're just really smart, guys.
Yeah, we're just really smart. High intelligence.
Yeah.
But
I think even with my kids, I think probably just telling them about, I mean, they're currently, one's about to be 9 in like a couple weeks, actually.
Wow.
8, so 9, almost 8, and 5. And I think with where they're at and age appropriateness and things like that, I would probably just be telling them about how like certain things about their body are special and they're going to be, I don't know. It's like right now trying to explain things about
it's very like
mine and Chris's relationship. It's like, how come you guys can sleep in the same bed? And it's like, well, we're married, and when you get married, you can too.
Yeah.
But not until then.
Yeah. Not until you're 35 years old.
But I think, I don't know, what was the original question?
Well, I just think like I wish we can joke because we're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And we can like deflect and all that kind of stuff. Which
how
is
do we help them understand the powerful?
I wish I would have understood when I was a teenager, like how important not just the nose, but how important sex was and how like just to like name it in the air. Like I think I don't know if a teenager would say no, it's not powerful, because if they're honest with themselves, I hope they'd realize, okay, like sex is powerful. I'm very intrigued or curious about it for some reason.
Well, and I think to a certain degree, I mean, for me, I probably will talk about the ways in which I didn't go about things the right way, and how that has maybe caused pain in my life. I do think that to a certain degree, we don't always want to see that something is powerful until we understand that things can hurt us if we don't go about it the right way. So it's like, I mean, when people are looking around in society and it's like, well, everybody's watching porn and everybody is sleeping around. And even within the church, I mean, you're hard pressed to find people that don't think that cohabitating with their boyfriend, girlfriend is a problem. And I think it's not that God's grace and redemption doesn't cover some of those things when we turn to him. But I do think that we've allowed it to be so prevalent in the day-to-day for all of us, even within the church, that I think it's hard for people to actually look at this and see that it is powerful, because we have so normalized it and so casualized it.
Would you say, when you say,
I don't know if that's a word,
like
casualized,
sex, or like the brokenness of sex, like that's become
normal. I mean, the brokenness is walking in sexuality outside of, and sexual relationships outside of the covenant of marriage,
the vision that God has for you.
And how that affects us. So I think it's and we will talk about this in other episodes too, but it's like these disordered desires that now we have because of the fall. That everything was broken in Genesis, and because of that, now we are disordered in our desires because we desire sinful things. And so that's now just the reality that we live in. And so sometimes we need to see that God has a greater vision. Yes, it's powerful, but what is the vision for it, and why? Yeah. How does that draw us in?
Are you asking me, or are you asking me?
Well, I guess. And maybe what you would think, if you were to be honest and looking back at yourself in your younger years, would you have genuinely listened to someone talking about the beauty of it? Or would it have just been something that you would have laughed off?
I think I for sure would have laughed it off. I think that's the delicate thing. I think what I would have liked to hear, and I did hear this in certain ways, but maybe not as intensely as I think we should be communicating this, is that the whole reason, or a big reason, I won't be so like 100%, but like a massive reason why we are created as sexual beings and why God cares about it so much is because it's meant to be a picture of like how much he loves us, how much he wants us, how much he desires us, how he wants to be intimate with us. And I think that had I got maybe some of that messaging, like, okay, I don't like, maybe as a teenager, I would have been too laughy and immature to be able to handle, like a lot of like the sex talks or whatever. But I think what I wish I would have heard is you are radically loved by God, and God wants deep intimacy and relationship with you. And how do we know that? How do we, any of us know that? We know that because sex exists and human sexuality exists, and God created it, human sexuality and our sexual desires to be something, to be the thing that points us to how much he wants intimacy with us. So I wish, I wish I would have heard maybe some of that messaging more. The sex isn't you have to wait and have sex when you're married, right? That was the messaging I got. Well, why? Why is it only a marriage thing? Why do I not sleep with my boyfriend or girlfriend, or like why do we care, like why do married people why are they supposed to have sex, and only sex with their spouse, right? Like not going.
And how does sex point to God when our relationship with God is not sexual?
Yeah.
So make that make sense.
Yeah. And I think it all boils down to intimacy.
Yeah.
And I would say intimacy, at least what I've been learning the last few years, is intimacy and union. Sex is a very profound, I use the term union. It's a profound union that happens between two people. And Lori Krieg says this. She says, God wants to be one with us. He wants such, which means he wants such deep relational intimacy with us. We're like one. He wants to, in a sense, he wants to restore what happened in Genesis 3. And I think, so this is why human sexuality matters. It's like and I think people forget too. I mean, I forget. I try not to, but sex is also a pre-fall human experience. Like it was created they were one flesh before the fall happened, and so God must have a plan. For even in that sense too. But yeah.
Sex is not sinful.
No, sex is not sinful. It's broken.
Yeah.
And it needs to be redeemed and it needs to be put back into order. And in order to understand what the order is, we have to understand how it's disordered.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we have things like Leviticus, like we have all these no's, and we have the design and all that stuff. But
yeah, because God was actually trying to show them he had a different way for them to walk it out. And not to walk it out like the world around them was. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Okay. So you mentioned at the beginning that having the why and the vision was something that would be really important. So for people that are listening, what is some of that vision then for sexuality and for God's heart with it? Give us some of what you feel like would have been really helpful for you to understand.
Yeah, I think, we've talked a little bit about it so far, but to make it, like, to go back to what we mentioned with scripture originally, that the Bible begins and ends with a marriage. There is a marriage in Genesis 1 and 2, and then there's a marriage in Revelation 19. The Revelation 19 marriage is between Christ and the church, and most people would agree, I think, well, we'll see, but that is the ultimate marriage. That is what we're all moving towards, and we are going to be that marriage. The Revelation 19 marriage is the marriage supper of the Lamb, and we're all going to be united or made one with Christ. And so for me, as I've been studying that, like, the whole vision behind this is that, like, okay, if I'm being moved towards that, then this whole journey, this life with God, is about intimacy and pursuing oneness with Christ. And so to understand human sexuality and why I'm a sexual being and why I have a sex drive and these kinds of things, at the end of the day, is about intimacy.
So how do you then experience that as a single person?
That's a great question.
Well, and I've heard you talk about this
Sure.
before.
Yeah.
So even, I think what you've talked about is even in your abstaining from, like what, maybe talk about that a little bit.
I mean, there's a few ways to talk about it. There's the abstaining from. So I believe sex is so powerful that as a single person, I am choosing to not partake in it because I'm not married. And so my way of showing that sex is something that's super important to the Lord and super important and super powerful and something to be stewarded, a way that I steward that is by not partaking in it and pursuing intimacy in other forms. There's physical intimacy, which I will say physical intimacy is the same and sex is sex.
Yeah.
But for me, I have to pursue intimacy in other forms. a lot of that looks like, my relationship with the Lord. What does that look like? Walking in the various spiritual disciplines. There's like 20 plus spiritual disciplines that prayer, fasting, journaling, like there's just so many. But so I try to maybe think of a spiritual discipline that I can cultivate that helps draw me closer to the Lord. There is intimacy and community. And so this is why, as a single person, my friendships are something that are super important and vital for me, because intimacy is, intimacy, here's a fun fact. If I didn't think you're going to get Hebrew today, and I'm not a Hebrew scholar, but you can help me with this because Lindsay talked about this, is the Hebrew word yada. And yada means to be known deeply, right? It's a Hebrew, so it's a Hebrew term to be known, to be fully known. And so if that's the term intimacy, and that the term yada, the Hebrew term yada, was used when referencing knowing God knowing us, and then it was also referenced when people would engage in sexual intercourse in the Old Testament.
Adam knew Eve. And
so intimacy is the deep knowing of someone. And so for me, that is something that when I am, I don't know, this is too vulnerable TMI, but it's like because I'm a sexual being, when I experience sexual desire, I have no physical outlet for it, but I do have a relational outlets for it. And so I pursue Christ, I pursue friendship, I pursue community, and I pursue various forms of intimacy, because at the end of the day, that is what, at the end of the day, that's what our human sexuality is meant to draw us into. I parallel it with fasting too, like to help people kind of understand. It's like when we fast and we're fasting a lunch or dinner or multiple days, whatever your fancy is, whatever suits your fancy with fasting. And when we experience hunger pains, that's meant to draw us closer to the Lord. Like we spend time with him, we go away. And so it's like the same thing can be said for sexual desire. It's like, okay, when I'm experiencing that as a single person, I'm gonna let that draw me into relationship with the Lord, and just try to get to know him, and vice versa, him get to know me. Did that answer your question?
No, it does. I think I'm curious too, and I think you can be really honest. But has that always been easy?
No.
Or how do you find like fulfillment there? And how has that been for you? And
I mean, that's a really good question. I wish I could say that like it works perfectly every single time. I'm never lonely. I never like experience like any form of loneliness or discontentment or any of that kind of stuff. It's not perfect. It's for sure not perfect. But they're muscles that need to be worked. It is but there's also, I'd say, I think there is, as I'm kind of thinking about it, is like there is also a pretty big faith piece there that like, okay, if God makes this promise that I want to know you and I want to be known by you, and I've made myself known to you. Like God has a whole lot to say about being known by him, and he wants to know us. Even if I don't feel it, I think sometimes we can say like, okay, well, what does it mean to like, do you feel it? Whatever. Like, even though I don't necessarily feel it, or maybe I'm experiencing loneliness, it doesn't mean that those promises are not being kept.
Right.
I think there is steps of faith, and this is kind of, in a sense, a longer journey. And I think if I was waiting and I wanted him to zap my loneliness in like tomorrow, I think loneliness is a human experience. I think there's not a single person this side of heaven that I think loneliness is going to be a problem till we actually get to heaven.
I would agree. Even within marriage,
you know? And so it's for sure not perfect, and it's for sure not always easy. There is perseverance involved. There's faith of like, okay, God, like I'm experiencing this, and sometimes there's a practical things to it. Like I'm just gonna go work out. Like I don't always have, like, it's just an interesting thing. I don't know if that answers your question, because it's not there's not a perfect equation to it either.
No,
and it
I
doesn't
think
mean
it's
it
just
like
helpful.
zaps everything away.
Yeah. Because sometimes we can talk about these things in theory, but then walking it out, it's hard sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a reality to that where it's felt like sacrifice at times. And
I will say, like, it's cultivated maybe a resilience. I think a resilience, and I think faith is probably a good word for it, because I think when I've gone through deeper seasons of experiencing loneliness, and you've been along for the ride with those, like, that can't all fall on you as my really good friend. Like, and so, like, we have to, I think, for my friends, like, your faith is increased by seeing the Lord even sustain me in those moments. So it's like, it's impacting quite a few different things. But those seasons of loneliness, or really deep loneliness that I've felt, have been temporary.
yeah.
Now, it doesn't mean that, like, it's on a cycle and it changes from time to time. Some seasons of loneliness can feel a little bit longer, more painful, but they're actually fairly temporary, I would say. Like, there's always an end date to them. And I think as I've gone through seasons of loneliness, and in those moments where I feel lonely, cultivated my relationship with God through whatever means of spiritual disciplines, it's helped sustain me for the next time of loneliness. And so I've had, I don't know if that, I don't know if I'm explaining it well, but
I think
I think that there's fruit that has come from me experiencing loneliness, but it, like, that loneliness has to be directed towards the Lord. Like, there's just things that get cultivated in those seasons.
Yeah.
So
I think you mentioned something really important too when you were talking about how, like, you're in this for the long haul, and what you get to receive at the end, because there is this sense that you could go towards the instant gratification
sure
of pursuing some of these things this side of heaven.
Some of these things meaning, like, relationships,
human
fulfillment,
sexual relationships, and yet that's not going to measure up to what you're holding out for. And I think that's really cool. I think that's a really good perspective.
I think one verse that has become a pretty powerful life verse, and it's I think it's relevant for this conversation, but is when Jesus says, I think it's in John 15:13, greater love has no one than this, that someone laid down his life for his friends. And that verse has come up regularly in my life the last several years. And whenever I'm tempted in those seasons of loneliness, or where the loneliness feels more intense, and I think that can last for an hour, it can last for 24 hours. I've had it last for months, like these seasons of loneliness. But that verse somehow just finds its way to the forefront of my thinking. And when I'm tempted to think, oh, I'm just going to go find a relationship with who I want to find a relationship with, or I'm going to find an outlet, it always comes back to, well, will it be greater than Jesus? And if Jesus says that he's the greatest love, then I've already found that.
Yeah,
and that's what I have to work at cultivating. And that's it. And it doesn't mean that sin or distance from God isn't a felt experience, because it for sure is, but I've already found the greatest love. And so I'm going to do my best. And I pray a lot that, like, God will protect me, sustain me. And I think even that's him showing up too in those seasons of loneliness. Like, maybe this loneliness doesn't get zapped away, but he sustains me so that I can get through it. Yeah. And there's always been an end point to the loneliness too, right? So, and then there's going to be an ultimate end to our loneliness.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's true. We've already said this, how I think even within marriage, that sexual relationship is not the highest form of intimacy. It's actually meant to be more of a fruit of the relationship, I think. And it's like the covenant came first, and then the sex is what consummates that covenant. But it's meant to be, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. It's meant to complement a marriage instead of being the ultimate goal.
Sure.
But I also think that for you, one of the things that I've seen you do in your times where you've wrestled with loneliness, and I think this goes for anybody who, because I've had to do this even being married, when there's seasons of loneliness, and I think marriages go through seasons where you're misunderstanding each other and you don't, you can be in a room with your significant other or your spouse and still feel very unknown and very unseen. And I've done that to my husband and vice versa. But some of the things that I think I've seen you do in seasons of loneliness, and I've had to do as well, is reaching out and kind of sharing in vulnerability with the people around us that would be that community and kind of help with some of that and bring about a little bit more of that connection and intimacy in relationship,
Yeah.
Because you're talking about God being a relational God. And some of that sexual drive is part of our desire for a relationship.
Yeah.
And so we can fulfill some of that desire for a relationship when we reach out to the people around us and say, hey, I need this right now, and explore what that looks like.
Yeah. And to go back to the Hebrew, the yada, like intimacy is to be known.
Yeah.
I think now the sexual intimacy is a very unique, special point of being known. But I don't know if I would say it's for sure not the only way to be known at all, because I think you could speak to this, that as the married person, that if it was only physical intimacy that you were experiencing, would you feel known by your husband?
No.
See, so I think that like as holistic humans, I wonder if that's a part of it too. There's emotional intimacy, like if we think of like there's mental intimacy, like like you're just connecting and you're being known as a holistic person. We know what we like, what we don't like, what we know, like me and I know you well enough, like I can tell if you're having an off day just by seeing your body language, which is an interesting thing that doesn't come with an acquaintance. Like when I walk into a room, you can tell generally if I'm having a bad day or not, which is maybe part of my personality. Maybe I wear things too much on my sleeve, but it's vice versa for you too. Like even you're not someone that wears your emotions on your sleeve, maybe to the extreme that I do, but I can still tell if if something's not right. Right. And I think that's being known. And I think everyone wants to feel known and know somebody. And sexual intimacy is one way, a very unique and special way that we need to care for, and it has purpose and intention. It's not to be treated casually because of how powerful it is. But it's at the end of the day, it's intimacy. It's being known. And how do we pursue being known? By the Lord, and how do I pursue knowing the Lord? But then how do we pursue knowing each other? Because if that's what my heart and if that's what my body is crying out for, to be known, then in a sense it goes back to what Julie Slattery says, which is another quote that I think I just posted this on Instagram. It lives rent free in my head. It's like the gospel is literally written on our bodies. Like this desire to know and be known is just such a powerful thing.
And I think there's this aspect too where it's like you also want to be chosen. And I think that's where some of that sexual drive comes from too. We want to be fully known and fully loved. We want to be chosen too. We want somebody to see us and say, I want that. And the sexual relationship does that on a level. But when you ask me, okay, if my husband only wanted that, I would know it's like, okay, he desires me for one reason. That doesn't feel like I'm fully known and fully understood. And I don't even think that would make me feel fully chosen either.
Yeah. Okay.
It would be for one purpose,
Yeah.
you know? And so there's this whole other aspect of things where we are so much more than that.
Sure.
That intimacy actually has to do with so much more than just our physical bodies.
Yep. Agreed.
Our emotions and our spirituality and all of that.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So to kind of maybe land the plane, as some people like to say. So we started this conversation out like, how do we know God cares about human sexuality? Well, it's all because he's relational. He cares about knowing us. And at the end of the day, I think that's human sexuality. That's what it's pointing towards. It's a powerful tool that maybe tools, I don't know if that's a too casual way of talking. It's a powerful force that he's wired us within the human experience that, hey, I want you to understand a drive for intimacy, which maybe is some language you can put to it, but I want you to understand a drive for intimacy so that you know how much I love and value and I want intimacy with you. So I think that I think that's a way that I would do it. Like, I don't know if you would have any, how do we know, to wrap this up, like, how do we know, we've talked a lot, but intimacy is kind of coming out, but like, what are some other ways that we know God cares about human sexuality?
I mean, the things that we've already mentioned, but also I think I've heard you say this lots of times, and I think it's a quote from, is it St. Augustine?
We'll say the quote and I'll have to
basically saying, if you want to know what is most sacred to God,
West.
Christopher West.
Yeah.
Then if you want to know what's most sacred to God, then look at what is most profaned. And I think we see so much brokenness surrounding sexual desires and that disordered desire and how it affects the world around us that I think we can even see from that this is something important. Yeah. Because it has been so twisted. It has been so detrimental in so many ways that we have to, recognizing that God made it pre-fall. He had an intention for it and a plan that the enemy has so twisted. So it must be so important. Yep. And I don't even know if we will fully be able to understand the importance of it and how incredible it is. But on this side of heaven. Sure. But I think it's kind of like what you said, like there's this aspect of trust and faith that we put to believe that God really cares about this. Yep. And he's told us that he does. Yep. So we need to trust him on it.
And that's it. Yeah. In a sense, if all of Scripture is a love story of God pursuing in radical pursuit of his people, then it's a story of radical intimacy and what that looks like. And I think he cares about human sexuality because it's meant to be a gift to us, to show us a part of to give us a small like piece of like, hey, if you want to understand how much I want to know you and pursue you, like here, like look at your sexual desire, look at your sexuality and see that like I've created something in you, a powerful drive within you to, in a sense, try to capture my drive for you and I think Christians can and people make things weird. It's not a sexual relationship we have with the Lord. It's hopefully at the end of the day, people hear that like God wants to know you and be known by you. He wants a radical, intimate relationship with you. And if you want to understand how that could even be true, look at your sex drive. Yeah.
It's powerful.
It's a powerful force and it's there for a reason.
Yeah. So, it's really good.
Any other final thoughts?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. All right. Well, until next time, I'm sure this is one of those conversations that probably could spark questions, which is fantastic. If you have questions or comments or any of the like, please feel free to leave them in the comment section or send CCS an email. That's in the description. But yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this. And if you want to hear us keep talking about this, then we'll have another conversation about it. All right. Bye.
Thanks for being here. If someone came to mind while you were listening, share this with them. And wherever you are in your journey, keep trusting Jesus. He's leading you somewhere good. We'll see you next time.